Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Drew here. I want to welcome you all to a brand new episode of Phoenix Down. This is Phoenix Down episode number 99.0. And before we get into, we're almost to game 100. Before we get into our game topic, Matt and I were discussing not the details of, because he has not actually finished it, but we were detailing the show that he got me into that quickly turned into probably my favorite show of all time, and the show that turned Ken into a giant fan of it as well. Supernatural ended this past couple weeks. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And I said, quote, that's probably the best way to end that show that they could have, because it was such a long-running show. And Matt, you said that Quantum Leap, for the longest time, was the worst ending you've ever seen to a TV show?
Yeah, for me, for a long time, just because it's so abrupt, right? So many shows just never get that chance to craft an ending and tie up loose ends and mythology and all that. So for me, the way it just ends with like one individual scene tacked on in a bar where, where he may or may not be speaking with God, and, it's kind of a running question, I guess, through the series, but with nothing tied up at all and it just ends, I always kind of held that up as one of my least favorite endings to a show that I really, really enjoyed throughout its run.
So, in your opinion, give me some other shows that had horrible endings that you can't stand.
Well, there's a situation I find interesting. So, when a show maybe should end and they try to get extra seasons out of it and they radically change it.
True.
I'm thinking specifically about the X-Files, where as much as I love the show, it did get bogged down in the middle a little bit. And then they tacked on, 2 seasons at the end where Mulder and Scully aren't even the stars in it anymore?
Yeah.
Separated from the recent reboots. But that's just a weird thing to do. I mean, the X-Files is inherently Mulder and Scully, and then all of a sudden they're not the leads anymore. That's a strange way to extend a show, I think.
True.
And they did a little bit of a similar thing in Stargate SG-1, where they switched away from the System Lords, and those are no longer the bad guys. Now you've got the Ori, and they come in for 2 seasons. And it maybe similarly gets a little bit more of a comedic feel. I know Supernatural had that a little bit as well. When you're expanding the episode number so much, you get maybe a few more comedic episodes than you do early on. But yeah, Stargate and X-Files I thought were very strange ways to end the series, and you can almost debate which one's really the end. Is it when the main characters leave, or is it, when they actually stop making episodes?
It's true.
Lost is often held up as pretty accept it. I won't even say love it or hate it, but accept it or hate it.
I will fully tell you, I thought the ending to Lost was fine.
Yeah, I did too, but I know it's generated a lot of controversy.
Yeah. That last season, I think, confused a lot of people. And there was a stigma because of that last season, and a misconception, I believe. But
I think that statement might apply to Game of Thrones?
Wow.
that last season? I actually haven't finished that either.
Go ahead and just don't. Just don't. Just don't. That was the... I had... That's the epitome of the ending to Game of Thrones. I had forgotten about that show.
Well, that's funny that you say it, and I don't know if you're softly referencing, but I've seen this comment twice in the last week or so, that this is how bad the ending was. Is it no longer is part of pop culture after being such a huge piece of it for a long, long time. as soon as it ended, it left such a sour taste. If that's the reason, but all of a sudden you almost never hear references to Game of Thrones anymore.
No.
Only like say a year after, and it's gone. So there can be no better evidence that you've done an ending wrong, I think.
So Game of Thrones was funny because the zeitgeist was real. Season 1, Season 2, Season 3. Season 3 was airing at the time, and I was like, okay, fine. I'll watch Game of Thrones. I'd never watched it, didn't particularly care to watch it, but, well, I illegally downloaded the first 2 seasons. Just go ahead and put it out there. And I watched the first season. I said, okay, all right, it's okay. And I started season 2 and said, wow, they're introducing a lot more characters this season. I can't keep up anymore.
Yep.
I don't know if I care about this anymore. And so I stopped watching.
That was my problem with the book as well. Actually, I remember being 100 pages into the first book and being like, I'm 100 pages in. There may be 100 characters. It's outrageous. How can anyone keep this straight? But
yeah.
I mean it's definitely it throws you in there.
So I didn't watch any of the rest of it. And then I think the hype for the last season of Game of Thrones was kicking in, and my wife wanted to watch it. She was like, hey, you mind if I get HBO? We were going to tack it onto our Hulu account so she could watch all of it. I was like, sure. I mean, it gave me a chance to watch Westworld, which was what I wanted to watch. So now that we have HBO, I can watch Westworld. So she started Game of Thrones. She's like, you want to watch it with me? I was like, I've tried it before. It's not really my thing. You go right ahead. Just keep watching. I'll sit in for a couple episodes here and there kind of thing. And I did. I watched the first season with her, so I know what's going to happen here. I know what's going to happen here. I watched part of the second season, and then on and off, I would watch some episodes.
That first season's well crafted, though. Like that's a pretty big kind of twist ending without relying on your typical twist.
Yeah, and that's what kind of got me about it. And throughout the rest of her viewing, I would sit in on like 1 or 2 episodes when I wasn't doing anything. Occasionally I'd go play a video game and she'd be watching Game of Thrones. So
like in and out, like missing episodes in between.
Yeah.
That's tough.
But not the second to last. How many seasons were there? I can't even remember. 7?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. So I started watching the 5th season with her, and I didn't start from the beginning. I started halfway through the 5th season, and I was like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting. And it was the last episode of that season was the one where they were running from the White Walkers, and the White Walkers were chasing after them, and they were like stuck on this little iceberg, trying to fight off the White Walkers, and they narrowly escaped. And I said, okay, I'm kind of in on this. So we watched the second to last season. I said, I'm definitely in on this. I want to see where this goes. And so we were still subscribed to HBO, and we were going to watch it. So on Hulu with HBO, you can watch live TV as it's airing. And so it became like a Sunday night tradition. We would sit down and watch Game of Thrones together, the last season. And the final episode just so happened to be on our 1-year anniversary. And I said, okay, we're all in. I was already a little skeptical. Some things happened midway through the last season, and I was like, oh, what are they doing here? Are they going to bring that guy back? And I was like, okay. But we watched that last episode, and I was like, that's the biggest wet fart I've ever seen in my life. And it was a joke. And we haven't really thought about it since. Especially for somebody like, I remember Laura, she said that, she's like, I binged this entire freaking thing in like a month. And this is how they ended. I was like, imagine how people felt if they watched it religiously for 7 years.
Yeah. The only silver lining here is I do hope that if we ever get the end of the series in book form, that it doesn't fizzle out similarly. Because, as you mentioned on it maybe starting strong, I really liked books 1 and 3. 2, 4, and 5 are okay, and only would be good in hindsight if it builds to a proper ending. So the ending has to be better than the TV show to warrant these epic tomes of books, I think.
Right. Man. For me, as far as endings go, what had a really bad ending? I'll say this, but it got crappy. Like the last 3 seasons got crappy, and it just ended. And I was like, of course it ended like that. Dexter.
Yep.
Dexter's first season was fantastic. Dexter's second season was really good. Dexter's third season was god awful. Dexter's fourth season was fucking amazing. 5, 6, and 7, and then it just ended. And I was like, "Yep, this is wow, this is."
They are rebooting that, yeah.
Apparently they're coming back.
Maybe they get that second chance to set things right.
I don't want them to. They don't need to explore. They don't need to explore desperately, darkly Dexter or whatever the name of the books were. I'm just like, that one was pretty bad. Laura wanted to watch all of that. She watched all of that, and she at the end of that season, at the end of the show, she was just like, I hate Dexter. I hate it. And she was saying it throughout while watching it. And I was like, then why are you watching? She's like, because I want to see it. I want to see it finish. I told her, I was like, you're going to be disappointed. And sure enough, she can't stand the character, Dexter.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
it's interesting if you have a main character that's interesting but unlikable, so you want to watch him, or just unlikable, and you're not sure why you're watching it.
A show that was great and then got insanely ridiculous, Prison Break. For the first 2 seasons of Prison Break were quality TV.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me because season 1, I was in. I was hooked. I absolutely loved that show. Maybe it was reminding me a little bit of Shawshank, but regardless, it was amazing. Just the idea. I want to see these guys break out. And I was like, how can it be more than 1 season, though?
Yeah. It's a prison break.
Yeah, they broke.
You broke out of prison.
But so I was hesitant going into season 2 and really surprised how much I liked it.
Yeah, season 2 did good. Season 2 was them on the run. Okay, yep. Sure. Season 3, they go back to prison.
I fizzled fast. As much as I loved 1 and 2, I only made it probably 2 or 3 episodes into season 3, and I was like, I don't know. I think this is over. It may not consider itself over, but I may just consider this a 2-season show and be done with it.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately, maybe less appropriately, but I did the same thing with Heroes. I was in on season 1. I really liked it. The last episode of season 1, I was like, I can't believe what just happened. I think I'm done with this. I'm not watching anymore.
Yeah. I watched all of season 1 and was really geared up for that. And then season 2 was like, wow, you guys are focusing on the wrong things here. And yeah. And I'll be the one to admit it. I got into Battlestar Galactica, but the longer that show went on, the more I said I don't like this show. That's
funny. I was going to bring that up later as we're talking about Dead Space.
Yeah. But I don't. The first 2 seasons of Battlestar Galactica, and I would say probably the part of the 3rd season was good. But when they started introducing more Cylons and the randomness of these people, I was like, these writers are pulling stuff out of their ass.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it throughout, but it definitely hits fewer highs later on and more lows, right? Like the one single episode that always kills me is when all of a sudden Apollo has this mistress. I don't remember if he had a baby with her, but he definitely had some random lady that he would sneak off and be with randomly and then come back. I think maybe while he was with Starbuck. I don't exactly remember the details. I just remember thinking that this doesn't make any sense with the character, with any of the other episodes. Where did this come from? What a shot out of left field here.
Yeah. Woo, man, that one. And then I saw the final episode. I saw that coming a mile away.
Yep.
I mean,
so the one thing that's real controversial for me about that show is the change when they're on, what was it, Cylon-controlled New Caprica, right? When they basically they're on the planet,
right.
And all of a sudden they're living in, I guess not
post-apocalyptic
really slaves,
world almost.
Yeah, controlled by Cylons. The whole time I was watching that, and still to this day, I can't decide if that was a bold change of pace for the show, or if it was just a weird detour away from what made the show good.
I feel like it was a weird detour because it made sense in a grand scheme, but then I was like, why are we here? Why, like, really? Like, at that point, I was just like, they should have ended the show last season. They could easily, this feels like stretched. This is filler. I don't know.
Yeah, I still don't know, just because it's so different. It's such a turning the show on its head, and I find that fascinating. Whether I find it good or not, I don't know. But it strikes me as a very bold choice, and I still don't know if I think it paid off or not.
Yeah,
I may need to. I've started this show many dozens of times. I don't generally make it past the 2nd season. More just because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why I like this. I've had my fill. Thanks. I've got my happiness back.
But so I will pose the question to our listeners: what are some of your favorite TV show endings? What are some of the worst TV show endings in your eyes? Because I think that's a great topic for discussion. Obviously, we're doing Dead Space 3. And we're going to be talking about it. But we started talking about that, and I was like, you know what? I need to record this. I want to record this and ask the question.
It's like a half an intermission.
Yeah. Give it, well, to be honest with you, because what are we going to talk about, Matt? That is the question I pose to you. Because I feel like we have played about 4.5 hours of this game, and nothing, and I mean nothing, has happened in this game.
Yeah, it's I think that's one of my main takeaways so far in this game. If we're moving into it, but I'm really hoping that they make some decisions in this game to elevate things, because it's a bit of a dichotomy for me. I really like a lot of parts of this game, and I really dislike a lot of parts of this game.
Yeah. So, all right, let's just get the intros out of the way here. So for episode number 99, and for game 99, we are playing Dead Space 3. Now, we did Dead Space 2 years ago.
Yeah, timing got a little wonky as our Halloween episodes drifted a little bit, but
yeah, our Halloween has quickly become to A Nightmare Before Christmas. So that we're doing another A Nightmare Before Christmas series with Dead Space 3. We played Dead Space 2, I want to say about 2 years ago during Christmas time. It was something that both Matt and I had never finished before, and we always wanted to go back to and finish. Well, we did, and I said, you know what? I really like Dead Space 2. Dead Space 2 is a great game. Let's do Dead Space 3. Fun fact, Dead Space 3 can be played co-op together. And so we were like, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't we play Dead Space 3 together?
As soon as we find a minute.
Yeah, as soon as we find a minute. 2 years later, we find a minute. So, finally we work around it to where we are playing co-op Dead Space 3. So let me get the game intro out of the way here. Developed by Visceral Games, published by Electronic Arts, released February 5th of 2013 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. There was some controversy with this game when it released. There is some very aggressive microtransactions here, in the form of purchasing crafting materials, which plays a big part in this game, as well as you can even purchase, from what I understand, you can purchase health and ammo packs.
I'm not sure why you would ever do that in this game.
Well, keep in mind, Matt, we are both playing on normal.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we were to play on a harder difficulty, it would feel more survival horror-ish. I could be wrong.
If you play solo, it would feel a lot more survival horror-ish.
I would say so too, because it definitely feels like there are some instances in this game where I was like, if I didn't have you with me, then I would not be able to do it. The only thing I can think of is if they really tone up the AI of your partner, because I don't think if you play this game solo that Isaac is by himself. I still think he has the AI Carver walking around with him.
Oh, really? Because I would have definitely thought Carver wasn't around, but...
No, I'm pretty sure he's there no matter what.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. I've never played this game solo, so somebody can correct me if I am wrong, but I'm pretty sure Carver is always there because he is still part of the story. You know, he does show up in some cutscenes and stuff like that, so I would assume he's always there and it's just controlled by an AI, much like Resident Evil 5 was.
Yeah, because I thought I read there's actually a lot of, like, some of that is unique to the co-op experience. Like, showing up in the cutscenes, Carver actually sees some things in the game that are different from what Isaac would see.
So, I've heard that too. I heard that recently, cool. And that would be cool if I ever saw any of it, because, well, I'm playing as Carver in our game, and Matt is playing as Isaac Clarke, and I haven't seen anything, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I've read a little bit later on, which is one thing I'm hanging a little bit of hope on, that will tie to Carver's backstory a little bit.
So I would hope so.
That's kind of Carver unique, which would be interesting then, because if it's not in, or if Carver's not in the single-player version, you'd miss all of that, which would take what little bit of character there is in this game out of it.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm interested to know how they would handle that.
So, history with Dead Space 3, me personally, obviously I knew that it was happening. In 2013, I was working for ZTGD. We talked about it on the show. I never played it. I did play the demo, and I remember playing the demo with Ken a long time ago. But I remember thinking, it feels like Dead Space, but with another person there. And that was pretty much where I left it. I never actually played the game. I know I got it for free on PlayStation Plus. It has been on my hard drive for, I would say, probably about 5 years.
I've got about 5 games that I downloaded maybe 5 years ago. I've been like, all right, these are the next 5 games I'm going to play, and I haven't played any of them.
Yeah. Yep. So, but the only other thing I remember from my past history with it was I remember the trailer for it because it had a strange version of In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins in it.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, that's actually a pretty good rendition of In the Air Tonight. And that was it. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it was a game I kind of purposefully avoided when it came out because, I tend to get stuck a little bit in I'm not going to touch or think about Dead Space 3 until I beat Dead Space 2. Right? And I got stuck so hard in Dead Space 2 that there wasn't anything I was going to do beyond that. Happy that it came out. I liked 1, I liked 2, definitely 3 was going to be a must-play at some point, but only if I could get past Dead Space 2, which I obviously didn't do until we played it for Phoenix Down. And then when we did finish Dead Space 2, the only other real experience I have is I jumped like the next day into Dead Space 3. I'm like, well, I'm just going to boot it up and see what happens. I played about a half an hour of it and, was not much you can really tell out of the first 30 minutes other than that, hey, this works and it looks good and it plays good and let's get to it. I'm ready. And then nothing happened for a while. I have since read, in preparation for Dead Space 3, I did read the prequel graphic novel Dead Space Liberation, which is interesting in that it provides the backstory of Carver. So while, we're all familiar with Isaac Clarke from the previous games, this particular batch of backstory at least gives you some reason to care about Carver. And the art's pretty great in it. Aside from that, it's a little jumps around a little bit, but the it's a decent prequel.
Gotcha.
Some bad things happen to his family, and he goes out on a quest, and they don't have any option. So it's a direct prequel. Like it happens right leading up to the game, I believe.
Interesting.
And basically, they need somebody to decode the marker language. The person they have that can do that doesn't make it. And then they say, well, there's one other person who can do this for us. That's Isaac Clarke. Let's go get him.
Yep. And that's basically where we pick up.
Yeah.
But prior to that, we do a thing that happened in the past. In fact, 200 years in the past. It shows these two guys getting some type of data. Or like let's see here. I got the wiki up here. The game opens in 2314 on Tau Volanus.
Which is big both in the graphic novel and I think later in the game.
An ice-covered planet with an irregularly shaped moon where Sovereign Colony Armed Forces, or SCAF, Tim Kaufman and Sam Ackerman are attempting to retrieve a mysterious object called the Codex for Dr. Earl Serrano. After fleeing Necromorphs and finding the Codex, Ackerman dies in an avalanche, forcing Kaufman to report alone to his commanding officer, General Mahad. Mahad, being the only other survivor, executes Kaufman, purges the Codex, and then commits suicide. And then 200 years later, Isaac Clarke is sitting in an apartment by himself, seemingly drunk, or getting drunk, in a PTSD stupor. And that's when Carver and his boss kick in the door. And they're like, hey, you're coming with us.
Yeah, not a lot of choice here.
Yep. And they said, yep, we got information saying that you know all about this whole alien technology, how it works, how the necromorphs come to be. And we need you to help us, I guess,
interpret the language.
Interpret the language because there's somebody else is building them?
Yeah, well, so it's a little bit vague in the prequel, but what happens is that Carver's wife was working on a project, to better understand one of the markers. It seems like nobody can ever understand, and they're always working on it. But they decipher some kind of master signal that controls all the other signals, and they end up tracing it back like through space to find out where the signal's originating. And so they think this Tau Volantis is the origin site of all the markers. So that's why it's important. And so they're like, we need to go there. We need to stop markers and the necromorphs, for good. We're going to the whole world and we're going to shut it down at the source. That's kind of the impetus.
Yeah, I would assume that after the events of Dead Space 2, markers started showing up all over the place.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's kind of like a necromorph apocalypse going on right now.
Yep.
In certain parts of the galaxy, I guess. So they recruit, quote unquote, kidnap Isaac, and say, you're coming with us. You're going to help us figure out what's going on this planet. We think this is the source of the markers and the source of the necromorphs, and we can end this. So Isaac reluctantly goes with them, and this is the beginning, which is not only are necromorphs attacking us, but also humans are attacking us.
Yeah, I know we've got kind of like the separatists, the unitologists, right?
The guys who are like worshipping them.
Yeah, I think they're trying to stop us. They always are.
Yep. So we have to fight some of those guys. What we're eventually trying to make it to is a ship to get us off of wherever we are. And in doing so, we then team back up with this whole ragtag group, including Isaac's previous love interest, who is now the love interest of the commanding officer. Right?
Ellie?
Yeah,
who worked with Carver's ex-wife on researching the marker.
Okay. Man, these people...
connected.
For a large galaxy, spanning universe, there is a...
Small world, huh?
Very small world here. It's a small galaxy, after all, apparently. And so Ellie is helping out, and she was basically the one who kind of pointed everybody to Isaac, saying, hey, me and Isaac work together, and Isaac had to create a marker in order to escape from Dead Space 2. So he knows a lot about them. So,
and they've been like mining his mind, I think, between 2 and 3, trying to unlock marker understanding or interpretation. So I don't know what they've been doing to him exactly, but I know he's been in hiding from EarthGov. I feel like there's a really interesting world that I want a slower exploration of the world of Dead Space. Like, this game in particular is such an action-focused game. There isn't a whole lot of, like, mythology in the game itself, so far at least. Right? I think 2, for me, hit the best peak on this. You get a lot more understanding of the worshipping, and I guess, do we just rely on that for our understanding of what's happening in the world, in the universe, in Dead Space 3?
I guess. I just feel like this game is at breakneck speeds, both in its action and in its story.
Yeah, we even commented on that when you're playing. It's like it's crisis to crisis, explosion to narrow escape to explosion.
Yeah. Fix this. Okay. In fixing this, we broke this. Now go fix this. All right. Now this is about to happen, so you better hurry and get over here. Oh, and while you're at it, fix this too.
Yep, and this is where it reminded me a lot of the early seasons of Battlestar Galactica, right? Where you're just moving from crisis to crisis. The air's out, the water's out, the food's out, whatever it happens to be. The prisoners are out. But, and I guess we'll see where this game goes. But for better or worse, as we mentioned, talking about TV shows, Battlestar Galactica makes some bigger changes later on, right? They do that crisis to crisis thing for a while, but they change it up. That's unsustainable. And also, I would say that even while that was happening, you had really good character interactions, right? The Adamas, the estrangement of the son, the triangle you've got with Starbuck and the resentment that they'll hold against each other. That's deep, powerful, character-driven stuff that is absolutely absent from this game. Ty trying to overcome his drinking problems, and is he a good man? Is he good enough to overcome that? Is his history and his capability as the XO, what part of him wins out? Like those are really good character struggles. None of that is in this game, and it's not that this game doesn't do it as well as other narratives. It's that it doesn't even attempt it at all, which is, it's just where it is, I guess.
Yeah. So they have basically triangulated where we're going to be headed, which is that snowy planet where they believe is probably where the marker signal is coming from. But when we get there, the entire planet is surrounded by like a ship graveyard where a lot of bad stuff had happened, obviously. And all these ships are derelicts, like old ships from 200 years ago. So it's got like ancient technology on it, according to them.
Which is always good. I like a good derelict. So if you've got a whole field of them, that's great. Who knows what's lurking?
On top of all that, there is also defense mechanisms being put into place around this planet, seemingly to keep people from coming to it. So our ship starts to get destroyed by a bunch of space mines. And so we are having to quickly regroup. And I believe we regroup on one of the derelict ships. I can't...
The Roanoke?
Is it the Roanoke is the one that we...
think so.
Okay. And of course the Roanoke is still covered with necromorphs.
Yeah, because that's the one that Ellie was on.
What do you mean? I thought the Roanoke was the old busted ship that we have to fix to get running. Right?
Yeah.
I think the rest of the crew stays on the Roanoke while Carver and Isaac go off to repair it, basically.
Yeah.
And so we have to go and get parts from these other ships that are floating around. Like the Grease? Is that what it's called?
The Greeley.
The Greeley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where the majority of the game, our game so far, has took place, is going in between these ships to get parts. Go here, get this, bring it back. Go here, get this. Oh, well, that screwed up. Let's go and get this now. I feel like it's just go here, get this.
Yeah, so far.
And there's they all like, so we got to go get an engine, and we got to fuel the engine, and then we got to do this, and then we got to do that. And then there's also side missions. So when we first are able to go in between ships, which is basically us getting into a little, like, I don't know, smaller ship, like a little transport ship,
Yeah, like a shuttle.
Yeah, like a shuttle, and we can go in between the different ships. You get like side missions, like, oh, stop by here, and you can probably find some scrap that we can use. So we did one of those. We went to the USS Greeley and did whatever we needed to there. We leave, go do another, mission, story mission, and then the next story mission tells us to go back to the Greeley. I'm like, great. Well, at least we know everything there is to know about the Greeley.
We know where it is for sure.
Which I do have to say, and the thing that Dead Space has always done well is the atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
While I will be the first to say Dead Space 3 is not a horror game, it is not scary at all. It is an action game at heart. I feel like getting into the shuttle and very quietly flying to another ship, or while you're out in space and floating around, everything is dead silence. It does that so well.
Yeah, it definitely has good atmosphere. I do think it peaked in 2 so far for me.
Yeah.
Right, when you've got the scroll, like it does a decent job of having the environment tell some of the story. Right, the way you've got things scrawled on the walls. I mean, that's not really new anymore, but I think it does that well, where there's sayings and figures and drawings and stuff all on the walls, and you just wonder who put it there, and what kind of mental state were they in when they put it there. Where this game doesn't have a lot of story, it does have that atmosphere still, for sure. Both, kind of within, the interiors feel lived in, in the exteriors with all the debris and the planets in the background, and, taking the shuttle between ships and locations, all that feels really good. It feels, basically as good as you could want it to. I kind of feel like I'm there.
Right. And I do love that everything is done through the end game. And they've always done that in the Dead Space games, where you're going through your menus. You're never actually safe.
Yep.
But there's some major changes to Dead Space 3 from Dead Space 1 and 2. Now, not every weapon uses the exact same ammo. So you just get ammo clips now. While in Dead Space 1 and 2, each weapon had its own style of ammo. And now the big thing is, and I feel like they tried to take something from maybe like Dead Rising or something like that, where you can create your own weapons. So
yeah, or some kind of crafting, some kind of development path, right? Enhancement path.
Yeah.
Tree.
So not only can you upgrade your equipment, but you can also craft weapons. And it's pretty extensive. In fact, for probably the first couple of hours, I was still confused on what the heck I was doing. And I still don't think I fully grasped what I'm doing. So you can craft weapons. You can put like your standard weapon and then a sub weapon attached to the bottom of it. And you can do like better reload speed, better attack power, faster I don't know, it's there, and I feel like it was I'm just going to go ahead and say I feel like it was a ploy to sell you microtransactions.
Yeah, it does feel that way a little bit. I like it in concept, right? I love, especially if you're going to skew this a bit more towards the action side, give me some of that flexibility. It's not necessarily, I would say, replay value inducing, but it is kind of choose your own path through. And I also think it's almost better suited to the co-op play, because I kind of like where you had, for example, the shotgun. And so I'm like, all right, you're going to move up and to the side, so you're going to get this angle with your shotgun. When he gets close to you, you're going to blast him. But then when he hits the ground, I'm going to kind of snipe, because I've got my, I've got my zoom on my planet cracker, and I can position myself in a way to complement your style, cover your angles, pick off the guys that you've knocked back. And I like that you can kind of pick your approach.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's even a melee swing if you want to be knocking people back with like a laser sword. You can do that, which is cool. I haven't done much of it yet, but I imagine that if they continue to introduce new enemies and new types, that the ability to customize your weapons for the encounters that you're having on a particular level or section, that's pretty cool, because it's, you almost make the game harder for yourself if you don't take advantage or try to exploit that, and you can kind of tailor it, again, either to your preferred play style or whatever the game happens to throw at us next.
Here's the issue with that, though, is that so far, and I think it's always going to be this way, and you mentioned it last night, I believe, when we were playing it, is that there is no reason to have a gun that is better at long range or mid range, because every single monster in this game just rushes at you.
Yeah, so far, certainly.
So why would you not carry a shotgun with you?
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly been well suited to the game.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like, and they really want you to play around with the abilities. So you obviously, from Dead Space 1 and 2, you have the stasis ability, which you can freeze something in place for a short while or at least slow it down. You also have like the kinesis grab, that you can grab things and throw at enemies. And the dismemberment is also there, but I feel like it's not as important as it was in Dead Space 1 and 2.
Yeah, agreed. And if they're going to give you a shotgun, they're clearly not emphasizing the precision dismemberment.
Not like in the previous games at all.
Because it is still better, because I've been using essentially the same gun the whole game, and I put my upgrades on it, but I still can clearly recognize a difference between 5 or 6 body shots to take it down versus 3 strategically placed shots. So when they're moving real quick, body shots will do the job.
Yeah.
but there's a little bit of that still benefit that you gain from the precision. But again, with shotguns and like melee weapons and stuff, right? That's not precision.
No, that is, something's running at me, I'm going to shoot it with a shotgun. It'll fall down, and then I'll shoot it a second time with a shotgun, and it's dead.
Yep.
And that is totally fine by me, because there's a lot of stuff that rushes you in this game. So I'll be the first to admit, there's sections of this game that make it feel like a cakewalk, and then there's sections of this game that are just like, this is like by the skin of my teeth, we're surviving this, you know what I mean?
Yep. And I actually would chalk that up as another thing I think this game does fairly well, is that pacing. Like when you get those kind of kill rooms, they're not back to back to back. You're usually well equipped when you get to one. You do have to survive it, but then then something happens and you're on to a bit of narrative or a bit of travel, or back to collecting more fallen bits. So I like that it kind of ebbs and flows in that way. And what I like even more is when you walk into a room and before anything happens, you can be like, "Yeah, this is one of those rooms.
Oh, this is a kill room."
That's actually one of my favorite things about it. And where we are in the game now, right? There's been a lot of bombs attached to grates, so you can tell that when there's a lot of grates in general, and that means that the necromorphs are going to be traveling through the air vents. That's a sign. The bombs on the vents are a sign. When there's intricate ladder systems allowing you to get in between different levels, via a couple of different mechanisms. You can take the stairs or the ladder or the catwalk or whatever. All those things kind of point to, something's going to be chasing us around this room. And I think that's kind of an interesting way that a game like this can foreshadow things that you wouldn't necessarily get in a book or a TV show.
Yeah.
Right, because it's specifically about the gameplay of that killer room.
Now I feel like how would some of these stuff, like the puzzle solving and stuff like that require both of us to do something, how would that work with an AI controlled person?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some parts that are, I don't know if they change it up completely or if it's just, you just have the AI partner.
Yeah, that's interesting. But there is one thing I have to mention. The checkpoints could be a little better.
Yeah.
Also, when you select save and quit, I want to save where I'm standing.
Yeah, it's also misleading when it save and quit does not mean save your game.
No.
And quit the game.
It means saving your inventory.
And then quitting the game.
Yeah, and then quitting the game.
That's misleading. That's like false advertising.
Yeah. So, yeah. Story bits, though. Matt, you got anything?
Well, one more thing on the kill room. I really like that one that we had to replay a bunch, where there was the two kind of regenerating guys, and we're waiting for the train.
Yeah, we're waiting for the tram to get there.
Yep. I mean, that's just that's exactly what I like about the kill rooms, because, especially having played it a couple times, we know what's coming, we know where they're coming from. And also, again, enhanced a bit in co-op play, because I love the fact that I can see one coming at you, and I'm like, don't, I'm going to stasis it. Like, I love that I can see the enemies coming at you, but sometimes when you can't even see them because they're coming up behind you. And I love that, there's that, I've got your back a little bit. It's not that big of a space, so we're not that far away from each other. The enemies are, in these instances, unkillable, so, there's a constant threat. You're under time pressure. You're just trying to survive until the tram gets there. It's, it's a really nice, like, high energy 5 minutes of play, if it's even, maybe less than 5 minutes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but story bits.
The only story bit I can think of is we seem to be talking to a guy who has locked himself up on is it the Greeley? It's one of the ships that we're having to get parts from. And he has set up all these booby traps for us. Which obviously he set them up for the necromorphs, but then it seems he's went crazy.
Yep.
After going through his little ship of booby traps, we make it to the cockpit of the ship. And we notice we've been talking to a AI recording the entire time. And the dude's been dead for years.
Yep. Which is a nice little vignette, I guess. I wish it tied into the story a bit more.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I wanted to compare it to, and, obviously could consider it a unfair comparison, but how immediately God of War makes you care about those characters and their plight, right? It's not just that you're about to burn the wife and mother of the two characters in the game, but you're out there getting the trees, cutting them down so that you can build the funeral pyre. You're setting it alight, and as we talked about a little bit previously, in that first, you get such an immediate connection to the two characters. You get an immediate understanding of their struggle between the two of them. Neither one of them is particularly happy with the other, but they're thrust together. And you also get an immediate line of sight towards the goal of the game. We need to take these ashes to the mountaintop, and then we're gonna scatter them in the wind. that through line carries you throughout the whole game. And Dead Space does, again, none of those things. You don't really get a tight connection to Carver or Isaac. You don't get a sense of the goal, the overarching goal. We don't really get much of any of a drive, right? When you're going crisis to crisis, you're living in the moment. So I think Dead Space, where Dead Space lives well is at the chapter level, right? We're setting out to do this thing. At the end of the chapter, you've done that thing. Okay, that's clear. What it's never really done well in my mind, especially the first game where I loved the game, but I hated the structure of the game. Is that really like tying the chapters together? You know, each chapter was great, but the overall narrative just suffered for me. And, you know, all these things I feel like are more evident even in Dead Space 3 than they have been in the previous two games. And, again, maybe that's just after playing God of War when all of those things were so well done and so well designed and so tightly interwoven to each other that the absolute lack of it is more glaring now maybe than it was before.
Yeah. You're right, because the only thing I can think of as far as what we're doing in the story is trying to make it to this planet.
Yeah, and now from Liberation, I have a bit more context in the backstory, but why on earth that wasn't included is like some kind of preamble to the game. I don't have any idea, other than maybe to make you buy Liberation. And that's where I'm hoping that some of the loss that Carver has suffered, you know, in the mission that they've been on that started in Liberation, I'm hoping that he has issues with that, and there's callbacks to that story, so at least it gets some context for him being here, but also providing, you know, a bit more of the reason for why they're looking for this master signal in the, you know, the original marker, and to put an end to everything from the source. Like, as long as that comes back in some strong fashion, that'll enhance Liberation, sure. Whether it enhances the beginning of this game, I don't know, because it still feels very disjointed, but at least give me some kind of overall narrative to care about. It's the only thing I really need about this, because I do like the gameplay. You know, the game looks great. The game, I think, plays great. It controls great. The aiming is fine. It's good. You know, there's enough difference between the weapons. You know, I like the assembly of different weapons. I like the upgrades. I like that the upgrades feel like they matter. Right? I've got a gun now where I went from 0 upgrades to 4, and I think 3 of my 4 upgrades are double upgrades. And that thing packs a punch now that it definitely did not when it was built. So yeah. That I like all of that. Like that makes me feel empowered as a gun manufacturer now. Right? So all that stuff is great, but I just want a little bit more reason to care about these characters and reason to care about their mission.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it pops up a little bit later on, because I still feel like we're relatively early on in this game. We just hit, chapter 7 or 8?
Yep. 7. Mayhem.
Do you know how many chapters are in this game?
There are 19 plus the prologue.
Okay.
So we're like a third of the way in.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, cool. So we'll see. I'm sure we make it to the planet eventually.
Yep.
Well, right now we're still orbiting the planet, trying to get a ship to work. We do get an email, which I'll read off. Hopefully it'll give us some context for any of the story whatsoever. It goes in for Chad. It says, howdy guys. Dustin and I have been co-oping this game since last week on hard difficulty.
Nice.
And as of writing this email, we are a little over halfway. We've been taking some time to play through the side objectives as well. Frankly, my quest to try and play this game co-op is probably a little more exciting than the game itself. We originally started to try and play this game last October. I thought I had I thought I already had a version downloaded from PlayStation Plus, but apparently I didn't. I bought a copy off Amazon for about $15, but the co-op feature wouldn't work because of the EA Online Pass. It didn't make any sense why I couldn't download it off the PS Store. After spending some time looking online, I found someone had a similar problem. They said that they looked up the ISBN number on the spine of the game case and found out it was region-locked European version. I looked at mine, and sure enough, it was a European version, which is why I wasn't compatible with the US PlayStation Store. I then downloaded a free trial of PlayStation Now, and although the co-op worked that way, the party chat was very garbled because of playing my version through PS Now on a PS4 and Dustin playing his version on PS3. I decided to suck it up and spend another $20 to download the game digitally for PlayStation 3. After that, everything worked like butter. Interestingly, I found out I already owned an Xbox 360 version of the game months later that could have just been bought a month of Xbox Gold. Oh well. Okay, go ahead to excuse me. The recording stopped for some odd reason. It's not Craig, so it was my fault. I was reading the email and I didn't say, continue recording, please. But anyway, he says, anyway, the game is fine and all, and it's fun, and anyway, the game is fine, and it is fun to play co-op. On one hand, the story doesn't really matter. It's not scary. And the control mapping throws me off every time I boot it up. I'm constantly using med packs on accident. On the other hand, it is a competent action game, and the co-op actually works pretty well. However, I haven't really seen much differentiation between the co-op from the single-player gameplay. Some of the puzzles now require a little bit of cooperation, but otherwise it doesn't make that much of a difference. The only time I've seen it get a little interesting is about halfway through the game. Dustin's character, I'm playing as Isaac, starts seeing a crying woman out in the frozen tundra. From my point of view, I neither saw or heard a thing. He said he can totally hear her crying in his headphones. I found that kind of interesting, and since we're only halfway, I hope we get to see more of that kind of thing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm not really following the story, and I don't have much interesting to say about the game itself. Just enjoying the company and making fun of the bad dialogue and goofy accents. Every time I hear way, I think... every time I hear W-H-A-Y... I think is a British guy saying marker. It makes me chuckle. It sounds like someone doing a really bad Boston accent. We got to get to that wicked maca. Oh, I just want Mark Wahlberg to voice everything now. We'll probably be finishing the game up next week and jumping back on to our new system backlogs. Till next time, Chad.
Yeah, that seems to echo, I think, a lot of our feelings on it. I would reiterate that I'm actually surprised how smooth the co-op works.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen you jitter or... Well, I got stuck once, but I don't know what that was about.
That was whenever we found out you could dodge roll, and then you dodge roll into a door, and then was kind of floating there for a little while.
Yeah, but as far as my being able to see you and play with you, I've not had any issues. It was, as we've commented on, it's kind of funny the way on the PS3 to send you an invite to the co-op session. It uses the PS3 default system messaging in order to send that invite, which is really strange. It doesn't happen in-game.
Yeah, it's always been that way on PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 is a weird system.
Yeah. But once you're in, and there's not really been any lag, no nothing. It's just worked really well.
I would say that, yes, I have noticed there is probably just a split-second delay when shooting something. Because I will shoot something, and I know it hit, but for 0.5 seconds there, it doesn't fall back,
Mm.
and then it'll finally fall back, and I'm like, oh, okay. Because it's just long enough for me to think, did I miss that guy?
Yeah.
But it's then he falls over. I'm like, okay, and I've gotten used to it now because I mean, like we said, we've probably put about 4 hours into this game, and like my brain's conditioned to be like, yeah, I shot him.
Yep. Hold.
Yep. So, but yeah, I appreciate that email, and I'm glad some people are playing along with us. I just hope the story actually kicks in.
Yeah, and I could buy the argument that it doesn't need a story, I guess, except that I really like the whole sci-fi horror aesthetic. I like some of the mystery around the markers and coming from Liberation, this master signal, and why exactly, or are we even able to stop these markers at the source? I don't know. The necromorphs have your kind of unknowable Lovecraftian vibe a little bit. So I mean, and they just provide a fine backdrop for creeping around in dark corridors in the dead of space, right? Like it's maybe a simple aesthetic in that sense, but it's a backdrop that I enjoy. And again, it doesn't need it, but it is. I mean, I know we're playing co-op, but it is kind of a single-player narrative-driven game. It doesn't have some of the luxuries of full multiplayer or intense replayability. I mean, it does have some crafting now, but that's not really part of the Dead Space ethos. So I don't know. I want to see a little bit more to keep me invested in the Dead Space universe, or else I just feel like I'll play it and it'll be fine, and I'll just never think about it again.
I'll turn it into Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want something to stir the imagination a bit.
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, if we're getting down to the nitty gritty, I can't tell you the story of Dead Space 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like Dead Space 1 and 2 is way more impactful because it is a single player experience. It is a horror experience. You remember the sections of the game that scared you or you were really frantic. And having a co-op partner there kind of ruins that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely the case, because there's us talking to each other, there's the characters, there's you don't get necessarily that moody music, because what this game does really well is like the lighting.
Yeah.
Right? Everything's a bit dark and spooky. And that's great from as we already mentioned, it's got good atmosphere, right? There's definitely bad things have happened here.
Yeah.
There's blood, blood splatters everywhere. There's, again, maybe written in blood, but there's people's last hopes written on the walls. So there's plenty here from a basic atmospheric perspective to creep a person out, or especially if you want to be in that mindset. But yeah, you do lose a lot of that in the co-op play style.
It's Resident Evil 5 all over again.
Yeah, it does. It does really remind me of Resident Evil 5 because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, if it does enough at the end to give me like a new game plus and give me some perks, I'd be interested in maybe trying separately as a single player game. I don't know that I would prefer that, but I wouldn't mind experiencing it.
Yeah. So,
but again, that's somewhat also predicated on there being enough reason to replay it.
Yeah, try it again. Well, yeah, that's all I can think of.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see where it goes. Right, I really want to see if they tie to Liberation more. Because, as I mentioned before we started recording, I do just generally enjoy the idea that they put out prequel storylines, right? They've got one for Cyberpunk that I'm going to read before I start playing that game in the next day or two. I love the one that they did for the Star Trek reboot movie. So, I have had experiences where reading that prequel really enhances the core narrative. Yeah, I feel like Dead Space has that opportunity, right? Especially as we're, from Chad's email, where if there are going to be things that are essentially Carver's psyche breaking apart, and that has to do with some of the things that happen in Liberation, that enhances both ends of it for me, and it's one of the things I'm really banking on or hoping to see in the rest of the game. But if we are going to make it down to the surface, if we are going to see what's happening on the planet, presumably we'll find something to do with the origin marker or the origins of the marker, and I don't need a lot there. I just need a little bit to keep me strung along. So, yeah, I mean, again, the gameplay, the graphics, the co-op, all that stuff is really great. I just want to see whether they can complement that with a little bit better narrative and characterization in the rest of the game.
Absolutely. I'm still having a fun time with it.
Yeah, me too. I really like playing it co-op. It's really fun.
But that's going to be it for us. If you'd like to send us an email, it's drew@ztgd.com. You can also tweet to us. I am at Drew Leachman, and Matt is at REMGS. The podcast itself is at ZTGD Phoenix Down. But, we're going to keep playing through Dead Space 3. Next game 100, obviously will take place after the beginning of the year. And Matt and I have pretty much confirmed. I know Chad tried to sway us, and he has swayed us in a sense, because we are going to be doing Lost Odyssey next year sometime. But our next game will be The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And I've got it ready. Fun fact, I'll just throw this out there. So I'm playing the 3DS version of this game. First, I had to find my 3DS because I haven't used it in years. But I found it, and I found the charger for it, and I plugged in the charger, and it charged for about 20 seconds and then went off. And I said, what the crap? I turned on my 3DS, and it was still fully charged.
Seriously? How is that even possible?
I have no idea. But
I feel like I've never had a handheld anything that lost battery faster than the 3DS.
This 3DS, I got it sitting right here in front of me. It's a fire red one. And maybe I just got lucky. That sucker held a full charge for at least 2 years.
Mine won't hold a full charge for 2 days. I mean, I put it into sleep mode. I don't turn it all the way off, but
I turn mine all the way off.
It just kills. I've never had something drain that fast. If I leave it overnight, I can't play 2 nights in a row. I feel like without recharging.
Huh. I don't know, but that blew me away, and I downloaded the 3DS version of Zelda. So I am ready to rock whenever we are done with Dead Space 3.
Yep, my only intent there is to boot up the N64 version, play that for half an hour, stop, and then play the 3DS version.
You may make it to the Great Deku Tree. I don't know.
In 30 minutes? Or maybe I'll just put that as my goal. I'll make it to this tree.
Make it to the dungeon inside the tree.
And then flip to the 3DS version.
There you go. But, that's going to be it for us. I appreciate everybody listening. Until next time, I am Drew.
And I'm Matt.
And we're out of here. You guys have a great week, and we will be back next week with the continuation of Dead Space 3.